a moment. There you go. And we have several of the members to present their work. I want to begin with this slide. It's the season, but it's also something that I have been thinking about for some time to develop this idea. It is related to what we do, how we do it, and I want us to think about ancestors. The title is referencing a lecture by Kirsten Buick, The Hands of Our Ancestors at Our Backs. And I want us to think about this for a moment. Ancestor is a category of survival and insurgent knowledge. Those who moved through domination and did not die, in quotes, but left techniques, which is what we have identified as tactics, of living, loving, and fighting that continue to instruct the present. To call someone ancestor is not only to remember them, but to conscript ourselves into the unfinished labor of their defiance. It is not as in terms, the others, the other whose face, even when no longer living, commands responsibility and interrupts the fiction of self-sovereignty. Ancestry is the priorness of obligation, not only genetics, that structures the subject from outside. An ancestor is therefore both past and future perspective, the archive of what has endured and the mandate for what must not be repeated, a horizon of militant care where memory becomes method and futurity becomes accountability. And with that, I want to begin then by introducing Stephanie Seguino. Stephanie, I know you're there. Would you mind reading your statement? She might be away from the computer, so I'll begin. So it reads, in my most recent work, I am shaking up my way of seeing things so that images are less intellectual and explicit and instead draw on my more inward-looking intuitive self. I am working to find ways and subjects that are emotive as compared to work that has felt more documentary. One project has focused on family trauma. My latest efforts is to work with an app that replicates the look of tintypes and all the imperfect photographic process that has some interesting features. There is a shallow depth of field leading to a focus on a specific object in the image. Less contrast than digital images, and therefore softer, contributing to dreamlike state. Of those, one group of photos is of an earth clock on Lake Champlain. I photographed the same 12 stones in a different weather at different times of the day to explore how their abstract and surreal nature changes. I have been influenced by a variety of photographers that fall into two groups. One set is photographers that embrace an exploration of race, specifically the African American experience. These include Hank William Thomas, Down Bay, and Latoya Ruby Frazier. Another set is portrait work that is transcendent of the faces in the photo. Gregory Halperin, Luis Palma Gonzalez, Cady Grannon, and Fasal Sheikh. Their work has shaped how I see the potential of photography to create ambiguity and complexity despite the ability of the medium to capture extraordinary detail. I typically use a digital camera with natural lights. The tintypes are done on my iPhone. Most of my work had been in black and white until the advent of digital photography. I now move back and forth between color and black and white, depending on the project as well as light conditions. I print my work on digital printers with very little editing, similar to my process with printing in analog photography. And here's another image. Oh.
Francisco, I don't see the other image. Not sure how that happens. Maybe you can just tell me which one it is.
These are the three images that you sent. I don't know if
Yeah.
any in particular, but you can talk about your work in general. Go ahead.
Okay, great.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I so a lot of my work, my research as an economist is around issues of social justice, um, and I'm a mother of a Black son, and that motivated my work for a long time. Uh, the fact that he's dealt with a lot of racism goes without saying, and um, trying to use photography as a way to not only explore that, but really invite people to be aware of their stereotypes of Black men. So I did a series that was really just sort of straight photography, if you will, in that there were photographs of men from the back. We typically, stereotypes are more triggered when we don't see facial expressions. And then I did these frontal portraits, which my hope was to humanize them. I liked that work, but I really have wanted to go further. And I've wanted to go further also in going beyond the fact that photography appears very literal. It appears to tell the truth because it just gives such sharp definition. And so these photographs that you're looking at, especially the rocks, are a place called the Earth Circle, and it's located on Lake Champlain. And it was just me experimenting with a new approach, which is using an app that portrays photographs as tintypes. They look like tintypes, and what that does is it has a very narrow range of focus, and it has a dream quality to it. And the process is different for me as well because there really aren't many controls that I can use. And so for me, it's very much of an intuitive process. It really bypasses my intellectual analysis. And so these photographs are I really appreciated that Francisco sent me an article to read about the Incans and rocks. And one of the things that the article talked about is that some rocks in Andean creation stories are perceived as alive. And these rocks very much feel alive to me. Um, and in those creation stories, the Andean creation stories, they indicate that humans were originally made from stone and that stone is subject to animation. And that's exactly what I was maybe not even intentionally capturing, but why I kept photographing these rocks at different times of day in different weather and so forth is that I don't want to say the rocks appeared human because that's not what I mean, but they clearly were alive. They clearly are alive. And there's something that is transformative about engaging with our material world in that way, and it diminishes our self-importance, in my view. And from this, I guess this is what I'm trying to do with this work, is to lead me and others to a place where we go beyond our intellectual, rational selves that are entirely shaped and structured by the cultures and the sources of patriarchy and racism and so forth that we live with, to a different level of understanding our experience. So I'll stop there. I think the third photograph, I can't see it, but is the one that's a self-portrait. Is that right, Francisco? It's me in a mirror?
It's the first one.
Yes, the
Okay,
first
yeah.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah, the first one is your self-portrait in front. There you go. Yep.
So I'm going to be brutally honest with you all. I I wanted to do self-portraits, and Francisco had encouraged me to do that. But you know, the older I get, the harder it is for me to take self-portraits. And in some ways, doing these tintypes really kind of erases the, you know, the signs of aging in a way that would make me not want to take these photographs. But also, so there's that. And I just say I've never told anybody that, so you all know that for the first time. But I also, you know, there is something so deep about self-portraits. And I don't know where I'm going to go with that, or if I'm going to continue to do that. In some ways, the photographs of the rocks feel like self-portraits to me. Um, and so I'll just say that. And I don't, you know, I don't know how this work is related to my work, which has always been, well, let me say this, that has always been sort of outly related. I've done a lot of documentary photography and so forth. And I think in many ways that's, you know, that's allowed me to avoid an internal self-exploration, and, you know, kind of engagement with my intuitive self, if you will. And so I don't know where I want to go with this, but I feel like I've opened up a channel in myself to continue to explore what I want to express photographically, which is different and deeper, different, maybe not deeper, but different than kind of the more literal work that I was doing with photography until maybe the last year.
Wonderful. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about these conversations we've had about photographing without seeing, and not necessarily that it's the process of not seeing, but this idea of intuition that we're tying to rhythm.
Uh-huh.
Yes. Mhm.
Yeah. Uh, yeah. I mean, you know, I just say that I have a PhD in economics. I abandoned art when I was, you know, I think about 30, because I realized I had to earn a living. And so I, you know, I went back to, actually, after I got tenure, to doing art again. And, you know, it's a very different way of thinking to be an economist. And it really changed me in a lot of ways. And I really wanted to let go of that the rigidity of and the unidimensionality of that world, as important as it's been in my life. And so um, you know, what I really am attempting to do is to do what I had done in my earlier work, which was that I used to use a Diana camera. It was a $5 plastic camera, and it had almost no controls on it. And my impulse to photograph came from an entirely different place. It was like propelled from, uh, you know, the heart chakra, if you will, not to be too woo-woo, but you know, it came from that place. And so that is what I'm trying to return to, and using these devices, you know, such as this tintype app, to get myself there.
Thank you. Wonderful process. Questions, comments, and I'll show some of the images.
I have something to say.
Go ahead.
So I find the work to be very relational, especially the rock pictures, because you're returning back to those repeatedly. And I think that that might be how it's connected to previous works, like with documentary photography, because you create these relationships with, I'm assuming, other people. But you're also creating this relationship with the rocks by coming back to them, seeing them in different stages. That was just what I was thinking of as you were going, you know, speaking about your work.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. I I can't I can't see the images, but there is, I think I submitted a photograph of two rocks close together. Is that true, Francisco?
Yes, there's one image of a rock with ice in between.
Uh-huh.
And then the other one, it's a rock that has maybe a little hole, and then two rocks that are close together in
Right.
the background. Yeah.
Well, the one that has the snow nestled in it, it's almost as if that snow was like a baby, like the rock is holding something precious. So thank you for saying that. I hadn't really thought about it that way. But that, yeah, that really resonates with me.
Other questions, comments?
As you were speaking, I was really interested in a couple comments that resonated. You know, you start off with this very powerful comment about being the mother of a Black son and perception, the perception of the world, as opposed to our perception. And then you're describing the methodology of your photography, saying that there's a narrow range of focus. And that, I'm in agreement with Ariana when she says that there's a relational aspect to this work. And maybe being able to connect the idea of the narrow range of focus to like our culture or society's narrow range of focus. There's a real, there is a resonance there. There is an overlapping and transparency there that I find to be very powerful, and would like to see sort of more intertwining of that, to make it like more transparent about the idea of human relations and social context, and also criticism of our social contexts, because that's a very powerful part of how you relate to the world and how your art relates to the world. As you're speaking, you're talking about issues of ageism, of racism, and I can see that as being like a subtext of that narrow range of focus, and your desire to like expand that range of focus when we're given like this very narrow sort of portal or threshold to look through in order to understand that. I hope that made sense.
It makes a lot of sense. I like that. Thank you.
That's what I was thinking of as you were speaking.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's a wonderful observation. I haven't thought about it. Of course, and I was thinking as Sandra was talking that maybe when and if you exhibit these photos, you could also add some of your background in economics. It could be charts about this. It could be because it's also another way of seeing that I haven't thought of course. So it's a wonderful observation to think about that narrowness that charts, economics, numbers give, that they seem to be so real, which is also another way of seeing, which is another invention. So that's a very interesting, and probably there's also a connection between when you took these photos, what were you thinking about in relation to events in the world, in events in your life, and that is of course tied to economics, because of course you have to see it through those lenses as you're trained for that. So yeah, that would be wonderful.
Thank you. That's great.
Fabiola is also asking a question in the chat. She said, what kind of economics were you studying or teaching and teaching?
Yeah, I am a macroeconomist. So what it means is I deal with sort of national economic policy, but most importantly, I look at inequality and how does inequality affect societies at large. So in other words, individuals experience poverty and deprivation, and does it affect society as a whole? And of course, the answer is yes. My main focus has been on gender inequality globally, and more recent years, I teach on race, the political economy of racism in the US in particular, but also other countries. Yeah.
Thank you. Then that's the answer also to the photos in many ways. Yeah, I'm sure there's many overlaps in that sense.
Yeah.
Other questions, other comments? Thank you, Stephanie. We're
Okay,
going to move on. Yeah, thank you. It
Thanks.
was wonderful. To Fabiola. Fabiola, you're there. So would you mind reading your statement?
Hi. So my themes and research, I'm interested in ways to reconcile with legacies of modernity. Can everyone hear me well?
Yes.
Mhm.
And reclaim the erased forms of knowledge and world building. I investigate methods of capturing traces and memories that stray from Cartesian intentions of form and image, of color and structure. In doing so, I emphasize a plural ontology in which forms are both structures and image, celebrated and abhorred, medicinal yet invasive. Through articulating this plurality of being, I erode notions of purity that delineate boundaries of place, property, identity, and sovereign state. Through erosion, I seek to relieve material and immaterial forms from the violence of inscribed and subjected being. So, techniques and practice. My practice is marked by a committed use of quotidian material, matter that structures my daily physical life. I largely work with organic matter such as cotton, corn husk, and silk, and natural dyes extracted from my food waste or collected from my garden. I utilize textile and paper making processes such as weaving, macrame, spinning, and pulp casting to manipulate organic fibers and um, naturally dyed and printed fibers. Through this process, I emphasize the physicality of color, imprinting the interweaving, imprinting and interweaving the memory of time and space into a textile substrate. Through this process, distinction outlines the boundaries of structure and image. Through this process, distinct outlines. I wrote this in July. Through this process, distinction outlines the boundaries of structure and image are dissolved, uh, revealing objects from binary tensions. I sent some updated photos of some of the work that we see here.
I don't think I have access right now to the photos, but if you can talk a little bit about the process,
Yeah.
and then I can also upload those images into the collected classrooms.
Yeah,
that we have.
because you upload them before we start the session, so we
Yeah,
didn't have time.
do you mind if I upload them to the chat?
Sure, you can.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, the first image, we could go back to that one. Or let's go to the second one.
This one?
Yeah,
Mhm.
that one.
Mhm.
So these are these are originally two different works. I first began these works back in 2020 when I was in Urubamba, doing the residency, the backstrap weaving residency in Urubamba. Um, and these are, I was really interested in the color green as a natural dye. It's like not very common in the Americas, at least in North America, to dye with green. You don't really have a naturally green producing pigment without modifiers. But I was dyeing with yellows and greens to just investigate like the color green. I know one of them is called chilca. So these are this is like wool, Andean wool that I source in Cusco, and chilca that I bought from farmers in uh, not Cuenca, Chinchero. So like another like neighboring like highlands village.
Mhm.
And I'm really interested in how like images can reconcile with structure. I think the way that I've spoken about or learned about images in school was like from like a very like Rauschenberg, like kind of like there's like a there's like a structure and then like the image like supersedes structure, superimposition, like images superimposing onto physical structures, but images and structures are never like spoke about as if like they could interchange, like it's very like binary. So a way to kind of reconcile with like that history was I see as printing with dyes. Dyes like they permeate inside the fiber and almost like they become part of the fiber. There's no distinction then for me where the image is and where the structure is. And it's I think for me like a way to think about world building outside of like the constraints of modernity, of like past and present, of passive and active. And I come from like a sculptural background, so I'm not really comfortable working with images. The images that I work with here, the first one is a moth and a corn husk. Oh no, on the other one, on the left side. So I'm really interested in how works could look at viewers, um, kind of to help reclaim like the agency of artworks, to relieve them from the space of like subjected being. And one way I think that could happen is just by shifting the gaze. So like the subject that is gaze is now able to enact like the facility of gazing and of vision. So I'm really interested in working more of like these moths that have this pattern, these eye pattern on their wings. It's like I forgot the name of the defense mechanism, but they try to look like larger animals. And I really like this way of prey defending themselves through deception as like a strategy for survival. And then just corn husk and corn is just something that a media that I'm interested in my sculptural practice as like a media that um, is part of like the speculative history project where um, maybe there was like a very large like corn husk like media tradition, like corn husk paper. I think that segues into like the next image really well. So yeah, so I have a better photo of that. I just sent it here. So this is called Primer Palimpsest, and this is a tablet made of 3 layers of corn husk. The first layer of corn husk, let me just put in the chat. Chat. Download. There we go. Okay, so I just put, I think it's downloading. So the first layer is a layer of like hibiscus corn husk that has been dyed hibiscus. The second layer is an avocado dyed corn husk layer. And the top layer is a pericon dyed corn husk layer. And this articulates more like this speculative history project where I present tablets like in a way, I make these tablets and I present them like in an archaeological fashion, like not necessarily as art objects, but like as like artifacts that were like found in like archaeological ruins. And this one's like the first one that I found like in this like fictional society, where there used to be paper or tablets that were made out of like corn media. Um, the next one that I'm making is a little denser. It takes a lot of corn husks because it's like a lot of compression that happens. Um, but this is almost like a kipu is like another way of another like text form of like text that is not necessarily textual. The way how these palimpsests are read is each colored layer represents like almost like a cutout of earth, like represents like an epoch. So the hibiscus layer, the very top, the very bottom layer was like maybe like one civilization or like one community of people. And then that may have been like displaced or overcome by like the middle layer, like the avocado dyed layer, and the Paracon layer, which is like the lighter one on the top, is like an emergent, or kind of like represents like the present time, where we see like the emergent like present time, the yellow layer, but there's still like blotches um of the past. So kind of like the circumstances, the historical circumstances like are still like echoing today. And it's very possible that this is also like how I see like emergent ideology. It's very possible that this current ideology will never like really come into fruition, that the past ideology um is going to like overcome, just kind of like, I think, a reading of like how my understanding of time works, like in like this layered way, in like a non-textual way. And then the last image is part of this other series of mine. I mean, the first image is part of this other series, where I print with dyes. So that what this the first image is a work that I'm currently working on. It's in progress. So that one is called Talavera and Cosmos. Um, I first started like sketches of it in my time in Puebla. I encountered like Talaveras for the first time. Um, and I was also printing with Cosmos that I grew and I dried out. And if we could zoom in into like the Talavera, is that possible to zoom into the tiles?
I don't think I know how to do that. But
Okay,
yeah,
it's
but you can
okay.
explain it.
We can do
So
it on our
these are,
individual,
I'm sorry?
I said we can do it on our individual computers. I'm zoomed into
Okay,
it.
good.
So I'm experimenting with making images from dyes, and for the other dye printed piece, making images with dyes that have been collected from different geographical parts of the world and to depict like fictional places. So this has been dyed with avocado pits from my time in Mexico, but it also, the flowers have been printed from flowers that I grew here in New York. And the image that I have up there is, um, there was this building that I encountered in Puebla that it was a newspaper factory, or it was a newspaper print house, and there was like a some kind of like mythical creature. There was a story about like some kind of like mythical creature on it. It's somewhere near like the center of Puebla. I don't remember
Yeah,
quite the story.
it's the it's what is it? The Casa del que mató al animal. It's a Renaissance style facade that has dogs and hunting. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and the so this is like kind of like a reference of the silhouette shape of the building, and then within the tiles, this is printed on iron, so it's like it's not a new color, it's still avocado, but it's like a pH reaction. um and then the images inside the grid work are, if anyone's familiar with like Nazca in Peru, it's like
Mhm.
these etchings in sand that have been created in pre-Inca time, in the Nazca civilization. There were like many civilizations before like Incas that were displaced by the Incas. But this is a line drawing of one of like the Nazca line flowers. And it's just like another way to kind of like destabilize like a pinpoint geographic place that this image is trying to create, referring to at least three different like real geographies. And I do that too in these other works here. Um, yeah. So this one is Maíz Morado, um, that I printed in um, Cholula. I was doing a participating in a corn festival in Cholula last year, And I dyed this silk. I don't know if anybody sees in the chat, with purple corn, like Andean purple corn. And then I modified it with the size of the piece, like 45 by I think 25. And then I modified it with acidic water and alkaline water from like the Cholula waters. And this is just like, I guess, another way, but using pH to create more like the variation of color. And the water, like wherever we go, like will always like vary in pH, but I just kind of like accelerated that distinction by like adding like soda ash or like citric acid to like emphasize more on like on the difference in pHs. Um, the next step with this first print that is in this slideshow, the Talavera and Cosmos, is to further shift or further create images with the substrate, creating holds in the silk, using this embroidery style called cut work embroidery, where the holes are not necessarily like, the holes are also image. So it's another way that the structure or absence of structure can become an image.
Wonderful. Thank you for explaining the concepts and the layers and the process. It's really powerful. Questions, thoughts? I have a few notes, but I'll wait for last because I have a few readings that I can suggest.
With the flowers, how are you how are you actually printing those? Are they images or are you using actual flowers to sort of press onto it, or how?
I use this technique called eco printing, and it's basically you could get any like organic material. Even not all organic materials have like dyes, but you basically put it on your fabric and you roll it up almost like you would a tamal, and you steam it. So if you ever like made like tamales and you see that like the corn husk that wraps the tamal like gets like stained, it could be from like the spices, the achote or the chilies. That's like the effect that I did here with the silk and the flowers.
Thank you. That's really, really interesting.
I think I was struck by the variety of languages that you embrace in all of your pieces. I'm kind of curious, in Mexico City, did you visit the Huancali Museum?
The which one?
Huancali? It's a Luis Barragan
I
building.
didn't get a chance. I only have been to the anthropology museum, but what is the name of the museum that you're
I have to
suggesting?
look up the spelling of it because I speak Spanish like an evil 2-year-old. It's I I only live in the present tense in Spanish. I can't conjugate a verb.
That's a good philosophical standing.
Very
But
Buddhist.
my understanding of the Huancali Museum is it was a collaboration between Diego Rivera and Luis Barragan, and and correct me if I'm wrong because I was reading it in Spanish and I may have completely gotten this wrong. But my understanding is it is designed in speculative history as if the conquest had never happened and what architecture
Oh,
would look like. And I just highly, highly recommend visiting it, just
uh-huh.
simply because it embraces this sort of multiplicity of languages that you embrace in your own work. I immediately recognized the quipus as a form of my family's Peruvian. Half my family is Peruvian. And so like I've been to Peru a few times, and so like I know the knotted string and the language of that, along with the biological information about the animals that can make themselves look larger. I just Because the idea of deception came up a couple times, not necessarily deception, but the sort of like altering of time and space through different visual languages, through different technical languages, through different literal languages. There is this interesting book. There was a series that was written at the beginning of the 21st century called The Art of Living. And it
Mhm.
re-asks the Socratic question, like, how should we live now? And there's an entire book that is on deception,
Mhm.
which is interesting because it talks about how we deceive ourselves. Like, we often tell ourselves that we're nicer or more generous or better drivers than we actually are. And just the role of deception in society. And I kind of like that language as a parallel to like how nature accesses and utilizes deception,
Mhm.
because there's a speculative nature to both of those that I think is in line with your work. Again, I'm not sure that that makes sense. I hope it makes sense.
It makes sense. I did use deception to describe my work too, and um, it kind of I know it is kind of it does seem like a gross word to use. Like if we think about like contemporary like mainstream like ethics, like like deception is like considered like unethical in like most societies, but it's I mean, it's the reality of the world, just like the reality of eucalyptus
I
being
agree.
like this an amazing plant that has so many medicinal properties, but it's also like has created like huge like it's wiped out like viruses in like South America.
Mhm.
Um, it's an invasive plant, so just kind of like reconciling with like okay, this it's like it's a reality. It's like a very like matter of fact thing, but there's like I don't know, like liberalism, like moralizing things, and I don't know, like creating like ethical fantasies.
Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking about like, because there's the eucalyptus and there's also the utilization of sheep for their wool as well. And the sheep contribute to the aridity of the environment because of the way
Yeah,
they're compact the soil in the way that um, like llamas and alpacas don't.
yeah,
So
but
yeah,
this
I
like
would.
kind of like because also like this idea of like purity, and it's like purity seen as like and like the organic world seeing as like intrinsically good, but that's like another fantasy. Um and I don't know, just like the contradiction of because the introduction of like she probably like created like new economies, but there's also that what do you call like the cognitive or like the cognitive dissonance of like loving animals and like eating a hamburger. Um,
Yeah.
it's like both of them like kind of like existing at the same time, like these like two like extremes.
Wonderful notes, conversation, everything. I was thinking there's three readings that I'll send you that are in line with these topics that you're addressing through the work. One of them, and I don't know if I already sent it. If I did, you can just say it, but also I'll send them. One of them is Mimesis by Michael Taussig.
Mhm.
I'll send you also Silencing the Past, which is the scholar is thinking about how every time we choose something, we silence others in a similar way as the layers that you're thinking about and in the work. and he uses different examples through the chapters. But probably the most useful one will be slow violence, because it's precisely what you're describing with the llamas and the alpacas and the sheep and the ways in which we destroy. Also, you can tie it to this invention of seeing through archaeology, that we think we can understand linear history, time as a linear representation. And it's Emmanuel Ortega. He's a scholar and also
I heard his whole podcast. Like I heard
there
the
you go.
whole thing.
There you go. He actually, and the first image that we're looking at reminded me of what he talks about. So I'll send you, his book is about to be published soon. So whenever it's available, I'll send it to you guys. And he uses Retórica Cristiana. It was some sort of manual to indoctrinate. And some of the images that appear in Retórica Cristiana are very similar to the image we're looking at. It has the structure of the convent and how natives were made to circulate in the different chapels, which were outside. Once they were converted, then they were, allowed to go in. So it has all these violence implicit. So I think it'll be also useful to think about how the eye circulates in your piece, because convents were made as a technology to transit through space, to it becomes place, to actually force people to accept. And that's the same structure that you will find, and you've seen it at the Museo de Antropología in Mexico City. The museum uses that same structure to indoctrinate, because if you remember, the galleries are connected one after the next in some sort of chronological order, but also accessing the patio where the fountain, just like in a convent, is narrating or using this rhetoric about miscegenation and the mixing of cultures to produce the race, blah blah blah, that Mexico is. So it's that transiting that is also related to seeing. There's another reading I'll send you as well, and I've sent it to several in the group, Object Image Cleverness, because in opposition to ways of seeing that are imperial, we think now that seeing and light produces truth. But in Mesoamerica, they were very interested in the tension that exists between seeing and not being able to see. So that tension of the invisible to us, because it's also visible for other species. And I always give the example of how dogs go around and run around and around to poop. And that's because they sense the electromagnetic field of the earth. So until they feel comfortable, they set up in the position and they see it. They don't necessarily see it with eyes. I don't know, because I'm not a scientist, but we can't even sense it. Or if we sense it, we have learned to ignore it. So in Mesoamerica, there's also this tension, just like in the Inca world, in which things that you can't see doesn't mean they don't exist. So they produce devices to be able to see them. In one of the lectures I presented, the Black Mirror, it's one of them. Then there's many others. But even if you see it, doesn't mean you can understand it, which is key. Because in the misunderstanding, in the not understanding, also the Cartesian ideal is being absolutely challenged. And I'll make these readings available for everyone in the collective chapter.
You mentioned like a work called Rhetorica something. What was it again?
Yeah, Retórica Cristiana. And you'll find if you Google it, you'll see the prints. They're absolutely beautiful. They were also printed, some of them in silk, in that same
Oh, wow.
period. Some of the prints that were actually laws were printed in silk. So there's also of the same period, different printers printed them on silk, which is also fascinating. So there's a few pieces from the Puebla Cathedral at the Newberry Library in what is it? California. I don't know wherever it is, or Chicago. I think it's Chicago. So yeah, there's all this overlap of history there. Not only the it's there. That's what is interesting. That same layering that you're talking about of the different dyes that you're using with the different fibers. You can also, in terms of themes, history, and techniques, you can also find it. You know, these prints on silk, this layering of the prints and how make them circulate, also slow violence in relation to how the devastation of the environment is an imperial project, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah.
Quick question about the La Casa de, what was the name of the house of the dogs on
La
the
casa,
facade?
yeah, la casa del que mató al animal. So the house of the one who killed the beast.
Okay. I love the story behind it. I wanted to investigate it more. Que lo mató el
It's a
animal.
Renaissance facade. The legend is invented, but more than being invented or not, it's not similar. It's what Eduard Said talks about in terms of the cultural archive. So you can also tie that to the ways in which the Americas have always been represented through beasts, how monsters are associated, but also how through there's also this wonderful book. I'll send it to you, to all of you. Vicious, and it's the history of how we humanize wolves. And because there's no records of how natives were lynched on purpose, but because wolves were actually humanized, there are similar techniques that were used for lynching Native Americans and wolves. So the history of wolves, it's tied to the extermination of other beings, including Native Americans. So you can tie that to this notion of how these representations, which is it's probably the facade of the house is probably a Renaissance print that was carved on the stone. But what is interesting is what remains as the understanding of the image, which is associated to monsters and beasts and wolves and all of that. Very good. So other questions, other comments before we move to the next? Okay. Thank you, Fabiola. Wonderful.
Thank you so much.
So now, Yuqing, I know she's also there.
Hello. Hi.
Hi.
Hello, hello. Yes.
Hello. Can you guys
You-
hear?
Yes, if you could read your statement, go ahead.
I wrote this in July. Okay. Recently, for personal practice, I'm working and expanding on recording the moments of sketching in presence and then find a way to share the movement by elongate in the bigger piece. Focusing more on movement of arms, my instincts of choosing colors while the choices was limited, and the breathing process throughout every strokes. To also find a way to connect to this environment, since I just moved into a new city, these pieces would also be exhibited in the new exhibition. So next week, I found oil pastel suits my need for color and movement, having the ability to spread the color fast, create the courage of myself. Recently bought a set of totally 100 colors, pushing myself to expand also different colors combination under the weight of my usual color palette. Sorry, I just figured I didn't open the video part. So can I also add some more image in the chat?
Images, yes. Absolutely.
Yep.
How did I do that? It's a adding the file, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
See.
Right. It's file.
Yeah.
Let's see. Just get me some six.
And tell us more about the exhibition. How did it go and what did you present it, etc. If you can.
So Let me see, how can I do this? E? Hmm. I'm sorry, it's midnight here, so I'm a tiny bit slow.
That's okay.
Okay, so the file is tiny, it's a bit big. I'm gonna let it. It's a file, it's not an image.
Mhm. We see it here.
And it worked?
Let me open it.
Right.
Yes, you just have to download it and yeah, you can open it.
Okay, sorry, it was a file. So during this exhibition, it's actually a very small one. If you could download the first idea. I felt like the whole journey with this online residency, I have been working on a lot of several projects. I was focused on a lot on self-identity as a person from Taiwan. Like, we always have to face the fact of everybody's, or like not just in Taiwan, but the whole world is actually the formations of immigrants. And there's like, I focus a lot of self-identity and from all the traveling experiences and the conversations with others and also with Francisco. But during this project, it's also one of my first series of works that I start making after having my own home. Like, it was my first time I finally kind of feel like I'm landing in some places, sort of. So it's not just first I thought I was focusing on just myself, but at the same time I figured out was also a new way of looking at how I created things. Like, from the image from now is showing on, it was just always the sketches that I was looking at the landscape, and lots of my works are actually inspired by the sketches when I was in the environment. And usually I created or I exhibit to show either my sketches or something completely made in the studio. But during this series of artwork, actually, I kind of found a way to record not just the shape of what I've seen, but mostly the memory that I had during sketching in the environment, and kind of like, not like do it again in this desk, but to remember more about the feeling and the sensational part of the colors and movement when I was drawing. So, and I kind of feel like during this process, I had a lot of more connections with the movement of light and plants, how they grow. And so this exhibitions, the series of artwork is actually in my language. I speak Chinese, I speak Mandarin. In my language, it's called 晒过的日子, means the days after sun, like we're under the sun. So most of the pieces were made when I'm here, and none of the colors were exactly what we were seeing directly in the environment, but there were very interesting connections when I was talking with the audience, that when people were from this city, when we were like having the interactions, they could know like when or how I see this through environment, and other with questions like, are these like the real colors of the city? And I found the connections of finding this process very interesting. And for me, the most important part of doing the series is actually drawing those banana leaves. It's kind of a symbol that I found when I come back after I travel so much, and whenever I come back to my country or my homeland, that was a immediately sign or the feeling that I know I'm back at home. And I feel like it's just through the way of I'm drawing it and looking at all the movement of the leaves, of the colors and of the stems, it's kind of make me feel like I could understand the breathe through the whole environment. And I was very excited to have those painted on the paper. And yeah, I'm sorry, I'm talking a bit unorganized.
No, it's wonderful. And I was able to share the
The photo.
the photos that you sent. Tell us
Yeah.
a little bit more about the second piece that we're looking at now.
It was actually inspired by what I saw directly out of my window. There was a how is actually there was a period that I couldn't really like do any artwork for a long time, and the only way I could put myself back on creating something is actually doing sketching, and I just told myself I have to do something outside of my window. And I did like so many sketches about it. So I felt I need to make some works dedicated about the feeling about the city and the rooftops, which I love so much. Interestingly, when I was drawing this piece, in my mind I thought I'm gonna create a piece with like more bright or more bluish, pale-ish kind of city vibe, which we will see here because the sun is really, really bright here. Like all the colors are faded. But in the end, the color just look like almost sunset, and everything is magically and kind of shining in a neon colorway. And that's how it is. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. Questions, thoughts, comments?
Oh, thank you.
Oh, well, I kind of as you were speaking, it was, and especially towards the end when you're talking about the idea of the window and the paintings become this portal or threshold into another space, and that being sort of tailored to your vision of movement and structure in nature. But it seems like you're like, I don't know where in the city you are. They're very natural pieces. And I wonder, are you think is there evidence at all between are you in a densely populated area of the city?
No, no.
Oh, okay. Then never mind.
I moved to a very like less populated places of the country, so it's very close to the ocean and close to the mountain, and everybody is very welcome to come here. I'm in Taiwan, Hualien.
Yeah, no, you mean they're so luminous.
Mm.
So as you're talking about light, the luminosity of these pieces is really evident.
It's interesting, like this is something I've found when I was in Urubamba, Peru. Like I feel like it was a journey to make me reconsider what means home to me, even I'm like not in home. And by understanding through, I feel like what's that journey actually helped me to understand what's the origins of everything that I'm curious about, and that actually helped me to find a way to set my mind back home to find a city that I want to stay. And for me, actually, Urubamba reminded me of this part of Taiwan, or this part remind me of that part of Peru or that part of the world. like everything you will see, it's actually pretty faded or monotones in the earth or in the air, but what I feel in the land is actually very colorful and luminous, and that's something I feel very grateful about, and it actually show in this series of work that I've done. And one other thing that I want to appreciate that you mentioned was actually, I don't know if you have another files. I sent the first one. If you have the whole view of all these works together, no, maybe not. Let me send just one more picture.
Yeah, because I only have two.
If I could.
No, there's three. Let me get it. It's right here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So there is a file with the whole pictures in one view. You could see it's actually the very small collections, but when I wanted to do this, so this series were actually built for exhibits in the space that I created with my husband. It was a cafe that we want to do with lots of events, art events and conversationals, movies, music kind of thingy. And it's kind of the whole series were built like my idea of windows. So the frames of these works were actually the colors of the window frames that you could see on the old buildings in Taiwan, especially like a old, not ancient building, more like the old ones that came from like maybe within 100 years. There is a period of a kind of the houses, they always have this kind of windows colors. So my imaginations is also kind of bringing the idea of people look outside, but actually they're look into the environment in the sense of the concept of portal, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Sandra is also asking, I'm very interested in those orange circles. On the
Actually,
Mhm.
okay, those are actually sun.
Ah,
It's very interesting when I start the whole series when actually there was a day it was very hot, so I just keep on drawing those circles to remind me that days, and then I figure out it's actually sun. And I did with the neon colors of oil pastel to do a lot of circles, and I always put a tiny black dots in the middle. And after I was writing the for the selections, I just remember that this is actually how sun in Chinese were like written in the ancient way. Like it's a circles and the dots in the middle. So I'm very excited about that fact. And in fact, I'm also gonna like keep on working on this suns and days and like thing for my next project as well. How I
and I-
perceive of choosing the colors and also the relations between colors and movements. It's not logical at all. Like so I this is something I also find it very new for me. Like I usually have a very good sense of logic of choosing the color palettes, especially I'm personally an illustrator, so there's a lots of logic way for me to look at colors to proceed what I want to share or communicate in most of my pieces and stories. But I found when I'm going out sketching, whatever colors I'm bringing with me, it's more a conversation between me and the environment or the things I'm looking at. At that moment, I didn't even think too much, and that's why I'm myself also being surprised by a lot of works that when I'm out sketching and not thinking too much and doing this process is actually reminding me how I could still keeping those flexibilities and the movement of that I'm being surprised and back into studio artworks. How do you go about choosing your friends? I go on lots of websites and look at them. So yeah, I don't know what's the process about it. It's really like just keep on thinking about. Also, manifesting. Like I just tell myself I want something bluish and greenish, and then keep on looking at website until I found something good. I don't know. I really like it's like you're looking beyond that. You're seeing painting them. There's different colors. Are you using colors beyond reality is present? Oh, it does make like, yeah. I think it does make sense. I'm intrigued by the consistency of color palette, despite very different styles from this painting, and this is especially interesting as you describe your physical environments, having more dual colors. Thank you.
I think it's really important to see all of them together.
Yes.
Because as I look at them, okay, now I have problems with this language because it was written during the 1980s and everyone was kind of like problematic in the 1980s. But when Keith Haring would talk about his work, he would often talk about like how the more primitive, I have issues with that word, the more primitive a line is, the more modern it is. And when we see your work together, we kind of see this journey through time and also space, because these could be very modern and contemporary, but some of them could also be sort of primal. And when you see them together, they become both at once.
Mhm.
So, for some reason, I just love the seven suns on the gray background.
Yes, it's so
And
beautiful.
yeah, and then I'm drawn to the three ovals at the bottom, and then this sort of gold triangular form at the top, and then the landscape with the sun and the gray rectangles underneath it, and those are like at once, they refer to this idea of movement and color and space, but it's like they could be very contemporary or they could be very ancient, and we don't know which until we see them all together. And so, like, that's something that fascinates me, and I feel like I always have to see them in relationship to one another.
Yeah, I think I would add it, that idea you mentioned of Keith Haring, probably the term could help being vocabularies, the vocabularies of the lines that you use that create the rhythms. Because yeah, I mean, how art is described through our history is always vicious and terrible. But and as Sandra is saying, when we see it all together, they vibrate in a very complex way. And I think the suns, it's an incredible finding. That's something I would encourage you to explore more, to expand it, to figure out where it's taking you, because it's that moment, but it's also about language, but it's also questioning identity, but it's also um, having different vocabularies. You're already intersecting language with it, but also light. And I think it's also related to the ways in which you choose the frames, because the frames precisely frame the ways in which you make the viewer see it. So it's intuitive. It doesn't have to be intellectualized in any way because it's already there. So, yep. And there's many other comments.
Yeah, Agatha says, I love the use of a complementary colors. I love how you own the fact that you don't necessarily think too much for choosing your colors, and this resonates me. Oh, thank you. Complementary colors means it's very like different, right? Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Complementary,
complementary
I
colors
think.
like blue and orange, or
Yeah.
yeah, for example, yeah.
Color brings out the color of the other color, like
Yeah.
it complements.
Yeah, in
Yeah,
the
also,
chromatic circle. Yeah.
yeah.
I
I
wanted to
just
say there's sorry.
sorry, no, tell me, please.
Go ahead. I'll say after you're done with the color.
Okay, just want to share like a very non-serious topic about this series. It's the only two pieces that actually exactly the color that I've seen that day are this orange ovals thingy Sandra just mentioned, and the triangle thing. They're actually the clouds I've seen those days. And it was really funny because I saw the clouds, so I told my husband, like, look at the clouds today, they're so pretty. So we decided like we wanted to go and see them. But when we arrived next to the beach, it's already like almost sundown, so it's still pretty and we still enjoy the time. But when we were leaving, there were like another couple, very old couple, like almost 80s or 90-year-old people, very sweet. They just arrived and the woman just told the husband saying like, if we arrived earlier, we could have seen those shiny clouds. And that was the moment I figured out, oh, like there are still people looking at the sky at the same times, and they found exactly the same color that I've just seen. Okay, done sharing nonsense story.
Really sweet. That was a really sweet story. I was just gonna comment on talking about the framing and the way you frame them. It's almost like you're creating more density. It's almost like there's an emotion or what you're trying to say is like densely packed into this, window that you're looking through that kind of complements what you're doing with the color. And I don't know if it was intentional, but I think it kind of ties really nicely with your ideas. That's all. I could have typed it, but this is gonna take too long.
Oh, thank you. I did went through some process like to figure out how the composition works with each other, but it was after everything is created. So yeah. Yeah. Space, sky, stars. I like the relationship between space, sky, abstract, and Earth botanic flame. Oh, thank you. It's nice.
Wonderful.
Yeah, it's a
Any,
little bit like, oh, sorry.
go ahead.
No, but a little bit like in the same idea than the last comment. I like how you mix with this series abstract and figurative, and also like shapes that are organic, but also sometimes they're like geometric rectangles. But this works for me really well. So yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, wonderful. Any other comments? We're wrapping up, so last chance. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's always wonderful to have these sessions. I'm always surprised by, Kirsten calls them teaching moments. So I love learning from each one of you, not only the presenter, but also the ways in which we engage in the work is really wonderful. I also wish we could have some kind of traveling exhibition of some kind at some point. Maybe eventually that will happen in some kind of format. Wishful thinking. But so we are wrapping up for this session. We still have a few presenters for the next session, so we're going to email them to make sure they're.
No, I'm gonna tell them now. So just to make sure, something important, even if you send us the images right after or before the session or even the day before, it's not possible for us to do it because the presentation has been already put together. And if someone wants to, the next person who are going to present, if you want to share something new, make sure to send them at least 2 weeks before we are going to be scheduling the session, so we can actually have time to replace the images we already put in the presentation. So for the next session, we still have Jordis, Brenna, I don't know what happened. I'm not sure. Something happened with my email, and I sent all the images and the artist statement to Francisco, but yesterday we couldn't find yours. So please, if you can email me again
Your images.
your images are your artist statement. So you also are going to be presenting next, as well as Shalom and Ariana. So since we are getting close to the end of the program, the next session it's going to last 2 hours. So we can actually can present between 4 or 5 of you. So no, and yeah, we still have others. So yeah. So I'm just trying the next session, since it's gonna be by mid-December. It's gonna last 2 hours, and the last session it's gonna be at the beginning of January.
Okay.
And that will be the end of the session. So I'm gonna be the thing that I want to make sure is everyone who's gonna be presenting next session can
present.
come. So it's gonna be Brenna, Jordis, Ariana,
Shalom.
and Shalom. And for the last one, we still have Shedel, and I have others here. And well, yeah.
Yeah, we still have a few on the list, but we'll reserve
Yeah.
it for the last.
I
Yes.
see Jeannie, Matty, and there's others.
Yes.
Yeah. And also, I know, Eugene, please send me the dates for your on-site residency, because you are the only one that is not scheduled yet.
Very good. So thank you again. It's wonderful. Yes, Samar.
I'm not scheduled either.
I will send you then the dates.
Yeah.
Yes. Then you're
Okay.
the other one as well.
Yes, then.
I'm like,
Muy
what am I
mal.
going to put? I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then we'll send you, I'll upload these presentation on the Classroom, Collective Classroom. I'll also add the readings. If there's anything you want to share there as well, feel free to do. Update images from the previous, if you presented already, you can update images, and we will see you in the next session. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank
Thank you. Bye.
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 See you in January.
Hey,
See you
wait, I
soon.
have some questions.
Oh,
Thank you.
Yes.
Can I? Yeah, I
Quickly,
have
'cause
some
I have to
questions
go.
about the on-site residency.
I send you already the dates. Make sure to check you can email me, because we have another
Great.
collective
Okay.
session. So email me. I just sent you the traveling information last week.
Yeah.
So yeah.
About the talks and everything.
Yeah. Okay. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.